Welcome to the Julia Monte channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Monte, a women's fiction author, and today I have a really special treat for you. I have a guest author who will be having a new release in August, and she's here to share a little bit about her book and a little bit about herself and give us some writing tips. So let me tell you a little bit about her first. Her name is Margo Candela. She was born and raised in Los Angeles and began her writing career when she joined the Glendale Community College student newspaper. She transferred to San Francisco State University as a journalism major, and upon graduation, she began writing for websites and magazines before writing her first two novels, which were really good. The first one was Underneath It All, and the next one was Life Over Easy. Then she went back to LA, she travels a lot, to raise her son. And she wrote, was the third one? It was More Than This, right?
More Than This, yes.
More Than This, and Goodbye to All That. So her fifth book is coming out now. It's called The Neapolitan Sisters. So it's been a long time, right? It's been, what?
Decade.
10 years. So I think the last one was released in 2012, if I'm thinking correctly. Yeah. So long time. So Margo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions about what you've been doing. And then, because that's a long time, right? A long time for writers. Now it's funny. It seems like a long time now, but writers in the old days used to take years and years and years to write. Now it's like 10 years seems like a long time.
Did you die?
Yeah, I know, right? So we'll ask you a little bit about what you've been doing, and then a little bit about your book, and then we're going to end with you giving us some writing tips, because they're probably tired of my writing tips. And it's nice to have another author, right, who experiences something different to share. So first, let's go back then. Fill us in on that 10-year gap, what you've been doing, and between the two books, maybe how this book is a little different from the last ones that you've written.
Publishing went through a huge change around 2010. I remember when I was with Simon & Schuster and, with my beloved editor, Sulay Hernandez, and they bought Hillary Clinton's memoir. And I guess they bankrupted, they started cutting back like crazy, and then self-publishing happened, remember? Like that started to really gain some steam. There was just a huge amount of changes in publishing and also in my personal life. And I had to refocus my energies on what was my primary obligation and, most important role, which was to be a good mother and a good parent to my son.
Yes.
And he's a wonderful young man. He was worth every single second, and we have a wonderful relationship. And I did have to, and there were other things going on, like major things, and I just didn't have the brain space or the emotional space or, the space to sit down and write a novel. The second most wonderful thing in my life that's happened to me as an adult, I got divorced. And the day I signed the divorce papers on Saturday, December 3rd, that Monday, I started writing again. I just started writing again.
You felt that freedom.
Started writing that novel that I had, the same sentence I had rewritten for 10 years, basically. Finished that one in April of the following year, of 2019, I believe it was. And then, other stuff happened and completely put me off the rails again. And then I woke up I had moved from where I had raised my son to a huge apartment complex where I finished that 10-year book that I had been fiddling with. And then I moved again back into my old neighborhood because I missed my neighbors. And I wanted to give my son, he was in college, but coming back and forth, and I wanted to give him more of a home life. And I asked myself, what did I want? And I said, well, I want to write again. I want to get published again. And then I asked myself, well, what do I need to do to make that happen? And the answer was obvious. I need to take my writing seriously.
Right.
Period. There was, there's no like, well, I'll ease into it. No, it's like, I need to start this morning, got up, had my tea, sat down on my computer and made little adjustments. And within a couple months, Tony Kirkpatrick reached out to me and asked me if I had anything that she could take a look at. And I said, lady, I do. So I did a quick revise of the stalled novel, and I knew it wasn't ready. I know it needs another revise, but right now I don't have the time. She said, oh, this is a good book, but it's not ready yet. Do you have something else? And I said, I have this book, this book that I started in around 2001, 2002, 2003, which was the Neapolitan Sisters. And I did, instead of giving them to the impulse, which I think is really common with writers where you want to just jump on an opportunity, I said, give me a couple weeks because I need to go through it.
And it was already written.
It was already written. It had a beginning, middle, and end, and it was around 77,000 words.
Wow.
That's a lot. But it was a draft. And literally what I did was every day I put a chapter or 1 to 3 chapters into my calendar. And I said, these are the chapters I revised today until I get to my due date, which I told her this is my due date. And as a journalist, I'm, if I have a due date, I will get it done. Otherwise, it'll take 10 years. It was one of those, it was incentive, honestly, to just get work done and
right. Yeah.
Not watch the Great British Bake Off again, kind of thing. I think that the pandemic too, so times were weird. So then what happened was she had it, and then I woke up, and this is the truth. And I woke up at 3:00 in the morning, and I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen, and my exact thoughts were, the Neapolitan Sisters is going to happen. There is no more hiding anymore, and it's going to change my life.
So, you were writing during that time, but has anything, what do you think has changed then? Because within the last 10 years, publishing has changed a lot. Like you were saying, self-publishing has become pretty huge. And, there's a lot that has changed basically on what publishers want and what they're willing to buy.
Or take a risk on, honestly.
Yeah. What do you think has kind of surprised you, or what's been different?
I'm not surprised and surprised that it happened again for me, especially after a huge break. And after realizing the first time around with the first 4 books, what an anomaly that was. I am a working class background, first generation Mexican-American, first in my family to go to college. And I have published now 5 novels. That just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. I mean, I would play the lotto if I thought I had 7 novels. I still do, because it's almost improbable. And the only thing I can put it down to is, and I have to be very honest, good writing.
Yeah.
Good writing. And I'm not, I have a very kind of workman attitude toward what I do, but it's a talent, it's a craft, it's persistence, it's luck, it is connecting with the right people. And this story connected with Tony. And I am so grateful for her championing the book.
Yeah, really and I agree. I think every time I read one of your books, and I've told you this, it's, the voice just captured me. I do think you're just a good writer. You're a good storyteller, and your characters come to life. So
because I have no life. Well, that was clear before.
Yeah, living through your characters, right? Okay, so tell us them without giving away any spoilers. Tell us a little bit about the Neapolitan Sisters. What is the story about? How did you come up with the title, and what is the story about?
Well, the title for me has always been constant, and I had to fight for this title. I had to fight with it. And that was a very frustrating process because it just, as a Latina writer, you using the word Neapolitan confused people.
Yeah.
And it's all, but the title is integral to the story. And I was okay with fighting for it because I knew it was the right you have to pick your battles.
So they wanted to change it to something else.
Something else, the Something Else Sisters. And I came up with a lot of words for that. Something else. For a little while. But in the end, there's another story behind that. And that just goes to, the publishing is a very market-driven business. I know I did the right thing by writing this book. And it does touch on some pretty dark subjects, and I really believe that telling that basically not keeping quiet about stuff. This book isn't for everyone. And believe me, I've had people review it and they just don't get it. And I'm okay with that. Thank God for you that you don't understand, Yeah. It's interesting what people reveal when they are uncomfortable. And this book made me uncomfortable, and it makes people uncomfortable in a way where they reveal their own biases. I was called a stereotype.
Interesting. Because I thought
thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I thought the opposite when I read the book. I thought that you did not have stereotypical characters and it's stereotypical Latina family. Which is, I think, important that you're not writing about a culture, you're writing about these people, and these people may or may not, they may or may not have the typical Latino background. So,
I can spend, I spent a few minutes being really offended by that, but I just have to move on, and I write fiction, but I write with honesty and integrity, and to give the reader a good story and to entertain and enlighten and make them laugh. That's my main drive. Like I said, this is my job and I take it very seriously. When, I understand it's just one of those things. Some people just don't get it. And writing a story about a family of, what the father is, Jewish and Italian, and the mother is Mexican, and the daughters primarily identify either as Latina or Hispanic. Julie, the oldest, I realized after reading it, she doesn't really identify as anything other than a former alcoholic who's trying to reintegrate herself back into her family. And I think for me, that was, people really like Julie. People don't like Maritza.
Yeah.
Right. And I think Claudia is, some people admire what a strong woman she is, and also are a little put off by, how aggressive she is.
She's very sexually aggressive and open. And I think that, like you're saying, I think that could make people uncomfortable if they're not very comfortable with sexuality. So
that's for me one of the things in the 10 years, and goodbye to all that. I had a very brief sex scene, very brief, and I just kind of went into the story, and then somebody pointed out that it was brief but very hot, and I was like, well, you should see what else is going on in my head. So when I went in to redo the draft for this, I was like, I am in a different place in life. And this is a book about 3 different women who have 3 very different views on sex and sexuality. And my thing was, they have their own views and their own ways of expressing themselves. And or sex for just pleasure. How I interpret it through fiction and through the character that keeps in mind, it's true to the character, how she expresses her need or her want for sex. All my books from now on, I think I'm going to address that aspect of a character much more honestly and with a lot of words. I'm going to go for it. And, I'm not writing erotica. I'm not doing that. I think, sex is part of a character, just like dysfunction, sense of humor, what they eat, where they live. I think that all to me makes a character much more interesting. So, So this book is a preview, I think, to how my writing has completely changed. Like I could not write underneath it all the same way. I just couldn't, because I'm not that same person. I'm not that same woman, and I'm not that same writer.
Right, right.
And I'm very, very glad and grateful that I've gone, that I've grown up. I really have grown up.
Yeah, grown and changed. Yeah, yeah. So these, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I mean, isn't that what life is about? That you grow and you change.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I agree. I don't think that I could write my earlier books the same way either. It's just, you grow and change, and your perspective on life changes, and the way you see the world changes. So yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay. So you have the three sisters, Maritza, Claudia, and Dooley. And so they each have their own arc in the story. So what was your, when you were writing this, like what were these girls' goals? So you said Maritza was the one that was people like the least, because she seems kind of selfish. And she wants to get married, but like, why does she want to get married? So what was her goal? And do you think they have, as a story arc, as the whole book arc, do they have the same goal?
Well, I'll be honest, Maritza was the hardest for me to write because I found her, I think a character reflects something in yourself. And I found her annoying, right? And then I realized I was judging a fictional character that I created. And yeah. I needed to stop judging her because her story was just as valid as Dulcina's and Claudia's. And once I got out of my own way, her perspective and the way she views herself and what's going on outside of herself, I think gives a fuller picture to the three sisters together. She is very immature. She's smart, but not necessarily sophisticated. And she is very self-centered. And you know what people are? People are very self-centered, and that doesn't mean she's worth any less love or compassion or understanding, even though she is annoying. And Claudia finds her annoying. Claudia is very frustrated with her sister, Maritza. And I think Dooley, having gone through her own journey of just a tremendous amount of self-abuse, has a lot more compassion for Maritza. And Maritza will always be Maritza. Maritza, like Claudia said, she is who she was.
Yes.
And I think that's really refreshing. And you have to, some people don't like to read books with difficult characters. And I understand that. But I think she had to be the character she had to be. And for me to give her this huge awakening would have been false.
Okay.
I'm okay with her. I would say to a reader, just be kind to her.
Well, I think it's interesting. It's interesting that readers and reviewers will say things like that. I had an unlikable character in one of my novels, and people said that, well, we didn't, she wasn't likable. It's like, well, she wasn't supposed to be likable. There are, like you said, there are people like that, and they're not always, you're reading a story about a character that either grows or doesn't grow, hopefully does, but you're saying she is who she is, and she's not really going to change.
That's part of what makes a family a family. Some people just don't change.
Yeah. And we have to learn to love them the way they are.
And that way you can also love yourself. You don't have to agree with them. You don't even have to like them, but loving someone who is that difficult, it's a challenge. And I think for me personally, it has meant making attitude adjustments, and just sometimes you have to let people be who they are and just
So which character do you feel that you are most like?
I'm going to be I think honestly Claudia.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to say it was not hard at all to
write. Not what?
It was not hard at all to write.
Okay.
Very,
Yeah.
I was once told by someone, I know I was, in comparison to a passive aggressive person, he
Mhm.
said I was aggressive aggressive. Great, I am aggressive aggressive.
Yeah.
And I do, I want to get things done. And in a family, the role that falls on someone. And in my family, to a certain extent, the role of getting things done and being not pushy,
Being what?
not pushy, but aggressive. Okay, let's just
Okay.
say it. It's like blunt and pointing out no one likes anyone who points out the obvious, right? It's
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah.
So I am annoying and obnoxious. And I think that's what Claudia comes off as, because she points out the obvious. And, but she gets things done and her family relies on her. And it was, for me, I could relate to her the most because I've had to do that not only with my family, but with my own self. Like I had to point out the obvious. And when I was in bed that January morning, whereas like I have no one to blame for my lack of productivity or direction but myself. So I had to call myself out and said, be honest what you want and then go for it.
So, okay. So these women then, the other thing I liked about them is I thought they were very modern. So like, we were saying, they're very open with their sexuality. They're very open with, they're in control of their life. At least I thought they were all in control of their life. Even Julie, in a way, I think she was, even though she had her addiction problems and stuff, she was still in control. She was still making the decisions. But how do you feel about, like, as women, modern, right, women, how do you think that they reflect that the challenges that we tend to have today, that are, again, different than they were maybe 20 years ago?
I would say, I would have to agree that there is a reflection of how difficult it is, especially for a Latina, to be successful, to be dysfunctional, to put yourself first, to enjoy being a woman, right? And that has nothing to do with being a good daughter or a mother or a wife. To be content to just be who you are and just put yourself first, it's not encouraged at all. You always have to think, like, how is this going to affect my family? How is this, how is my choice? I mean, like, I know my choice to be a writer is completely out of the realm of what my family expected of me. And I think, they're very proud of me, but at the same time, it's I was raised to get a good, steady job, maybe join a union, and keep that job until I retired. And that's not the path I've taken. And so I think they look at me sometimes like, well, what are you doing? And then, like with this move to San Francisco, my parents didn't expect me to actually move, even though I told them I'm moving. I'm moving. Like,
you were serious about that?
I was serious. They came over to my house and I was surrounded by moving boxes and they still didn't think I would go through with it. And then once I sold my car, because I was in LA and I was like, well, I have no car. I sold it. They're like, oh, I guess you're moving.
I think for Latino families, like, you're not the only one. My mom wanted me, because she didn't have that, to have a steady job. So when I quit teaching, I was an elementary school teacher, to write and to take care of my son at that time. It was the same thing. Like, oh my God, you're going to give up a job with benefits and then to do what? To be a mom, to be a writer. It's like, well, yeah, I want to be with my kid. I want to. So it is hard. I think it's hard because they didn't have that. They probably sacrificed so that we could have that. So writing is not a real job.
How many times have we heard that?
Yeah.
It's a very glorified hobby,
Yeah.
And that's why we get asked to write for free all the time.
Oh yeah.
It's an attitude people have that, and maybe it's because people don't understand the process, or they just don't value what we do in some way.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
wouldn't ask a fireman, like, just put out the fire for free, or you wouldn't ask a doctor, oh, just operate for free.
Right.
But we as writers, we get asked to do a lot of things for free.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I'm, just in my own personal life, if I booked the space for the official, book launch, and he asked for a nominal fee to reserve the space. And I said, of course. And he said he was really relieved because people give him a lot of pushback. And I was like, well, you're in San Francisco. You have to pay rent. You have to pay, there are costs involved. And I would never, ever make anyone work for free or assume that they're going to work for free, because it's a lot better for my budget if they do. So,
yeah. Yeah. So you've always written Latino characters, Latino books. Do you consider yourself a Latina writer, or would you write books without Latino characters?
I'm a Latina, so I think all my main characters will always be Latina. But I do have all sorts of characters. I mean, male characters. I wrote More Than This has a male character, as a first person in alternating chapters, and the female character, his counterpart, she's white in that book. I want to write another book from a male POV. But I think for me, it's just, why wouldn't I write about Latinos as the primary main star of the book? And everyone else can play a supporting role for once,
Yeah.
It's not like we don't do that every day, right?
Right.
The token friend, kind of thing. So no, I think I'm a Latina who writes Latino
Continue
characters.
to write. Okay. Because, from the marketing aspect, because I'm sure you've heard this, and, I've heard it where Latinos don't read. Well, I've had people say, like, well, why don't you just stop writing Latino characters? Those books don't sell. Nobody reads them. So what's your response to that?
I think that's BS. I really do. But let's be honest, community support within the Latino community sometimes just is not there, right? It's just not there. They tend to, as a whole, focus goes on it's just a tricky kind of nut to crack. Yeah. I don't think my books mainly, I'm not just writing for Latinos. I just have, my books just feature Latino and Latina characters because I think our stories they resonate with me. But I wouldn't mind, even if you're not going to read it, buy it. I remember during when I used to be a huge magazine buyer, huge into magazines. So whenever someone like Jennifer Lopez or Eva Longoria or, was on the cover of InStyle or what have you, I would buy that magazine off the rack because that money translates into access, right? Mm-hmm. And exposure and inclusion. If we don't support our own community, our community is marginalized and we're doing it to ourselves. We honestly are doing it to ourselves. So, like I said, you don't have to read it, but buy it for your niece or your sister who does read. Any book, just do that.
Yeah. It is grown. I think it's grown too. Like that is less true today. I think there's a lot more people that are reading a wide variety of things. So. Yeah. So how about for writers that want to include Latino characters into their stories? What advice would you have for a writer who wants to write Latino characters, especially if they're not if they're non-Latino, if they're not, part of the Latino community? How do you write a Latino community, unstereotypical character that is, that's more authentic?
I would say ask yourself why you're doing it. First and foremost, what is the drive? Do you think it's because you have to have it's a small world mindset? I got to include everyone. I think that's disingenuous, honestly, to just include characters of color or different sexualities or whatever because you're trying to hit your marketing points. I think I'm going to call BS on that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's literally you're trying to put together a Franken book, that panders, right? So I think for me, I've had Asian characters, I've had gay characters. I just write who feels natural in that role. And so, I know all sorts of people.
Yeah.
I live in a very diverse city. So,
do you have those people look at it to see like, hey, am I getting this right?
Well, I'm lucky, like, so I read all my books. So she had a very wide perspective. And then I think I've done okay, like with my character James in More Than This. He was gay, but not, he didn't come out and say, well, he might have said he was gay. And I remember when my friend wrote it and my friend read it and he said, did you base James on me? And I said, yes, I did. Yes, I did, because I pay attention. I mean, he was fictionalized, but I love that James character, and not just because he's gay or whatever, because my friend who he's based on, just a wonderful, lovely person, and I was very lucky to have a friend like that, and I thought Evelyn needed a friend like that, and I think it's just being observant and respectful. Yep. But I think every book needs a character who says what everyone else is afraid to say. And Maritza, to a certain extent, is that person, because she has no filter, and she's very immature and she's very unsophisticated in how she expresses herself, and she is offensive.
So, sometimes.
Maritza, and there's a little Maritza in all of us. We might whisper.
I think it's great, and I loved her interaction with her boss. I thought that was great, and that I think that was probably the word she came across the best, because she was handling
love for her boss. I don't think she would put it that way, but I think, because I don't think she can conceptualize it. Her boss is Mr. and Mrs. Kim. She loves them like parents, and they've helped her grow up, and they've given her a framework for frankly, her weirdness. It works at work. It doesn't necessarily translate that well with interactions with other people, but it works for her work. And her, she's based a lot of her identity on being good at what she does. And that made me love her a lot, because I take pride in my work, and I sometimes get really in the weeds with it. But somebody who takes pride in their job and tries to do the best job that they can, even if it means being unpleasant, to get the job done for the right reasons, then, I have a fascination with like office life and work life. And Maritza definitely let me express that through her character.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So do you have any, as creative people tend to have creative space, maybe? Do you have like your own creative space? Do you think that's important for writers to have?
I did. I have always been lucky enough to have like a dedicated room that was my office, and I could decorate it whichever way I wanted. Right now, I don't. I'm in between housing situations. I just moved, and I literally, with a duffel bag and a suitcase and some boxes. So I'm renting from a friend, and I've taken over the dining room table. And that's where the magic is happening, and then he was kind enough to help me put up the wallpaper, and has let me turn this into a mini studio of sorts, with boxes on top of boxes, and duct tape on the wall. But I know I can't write here. The next book, I need my desk, I need my space. So I'd like to want to move into my own space in the fall, and by then I can start thinking about the next book. But I do need a creative space. I do need a place where I can shut the door and say, this is where my work happens. Or doesn't happen, but this is my space.
Where you can think and just write. I think that writers do need that. They do need, even if it's a little space, just where it's your own, where you can be on your, have that thinking time.
That's all we do is think.
Do you have like rituals, like writing rituals, like lighting a candle or doing any of that stuff?
What I do is I call it productive procrastination. So first I have to, I have the title, I have the nut of the idea, I write that down. I do English class outline for every single chapter. And then I do playlists. I will spend a long time making a playlist specific for each book. And since you sit so long while you're doing this, it has to be as close to 60 minutes as possible. So I will spend like a lot of times swapping out songs to get it as close to 60.
Wow.
And then, in a specific order of the music. And then at the end, I found a little bell sound and it goes ting. And that's my cue to get up and walk around, get some water, when I had a dog, to walk the dog. And then with this book, there were times where I got to the ting and then I just went right back to the top of it again. So for me, the music plays a huge part. And this is a progression, I think, because in the past, I used to have a TV in my office and I would play a movie, like More Than This was written to Black Hawk Down.
Wow.
Which is the complete opposite. And I can still quote just pieces of dialogue from that movie because even though I wasn't paying attention, I was still listening. And I grew up in a noisy house. So to a certain extent, I need background noise. And it's very rare when I will write in silence. And when that happens, it's because you're so in the zone, or I'm so in the zone of writing that I don't even, you disappear.
Yeah. Can you write like in coffee shops, places like that? No.
I can't do the laptop because I have lazy wrists. And I like this is my work. I like a setup, a dedicated space where I know this is what I'm going to do. Or like I said, or not do, but I'm on the hook for whatever happens. And I have been lucky enough to have a dedicated space, and I look forward to that again.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Well, I was going to ask you about plotting. You said you create your outline. So is it a detailed outline? And do you have like software that you use, or you just write it out?
I use a Word document. Literally just open a blank Word document. I have the title. I have the nut of the idea. I usually write like a very short synopsis and then a longer one. And then I start thinking, okay, what happens in the first chapter? And I just literally go down and this is another obsessive thing. Like I decide like, how many chapters do I want? 12. So if I do 12 chapters, I'll cut them into sections of 3 with an aim for a word count of 90,000, and then get obsessed and try to make each chapter equal word. I mean, it gets a little crazy. And I think that's just, you spend a little bit too much time alone. And this makes sense to me, right? It makes sense to me.
No, that's good. That's good that you're that,
Well, that's the journalism training right there. The journalism training taught me to write everything with a beginning, middle, and an end. And then I majored in feature writing, and a feature article is maybe 8,000 words, if for a super long one, or 5,000 words. So I've been able to adapt that into chapters. And that's just a quirk. I like structure. I really do like the structure of it.
Do you follow any of the like hero's journey structures or any of that?
I follow the beginning, middle, and end.
Okay.
I honestly really do. And I think I'm not a trained fiction writer. I took one creative fiction writing class at the end of my college year, my last semester, and it was so painful for me. It was really, because I was used to dealing with facts.
Yeah. Wow.
Even with a narrative feature, it was a factual beginning, middle, and end. And here I was asked in this poor class, this poor woman, I just sat the whole time kind of scrunched up, like, don't call on me. We had to write poetry, which I found very painful.
Yeah, poetry is hard. I really admire poets because it's hard to write, to think metaphorically and all of that is just.
For me, to be that vulnerable is very, very difficult, very difficult. And it still is, even though I wrote a very, I think, very vulnerable book.
Yeah. It's just different though when you're using all that, the figurative language and all that. It's hard.
It's hard. It's so hard. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so
but I do admire people who can do it.
yeah, me too. Me too. I just, I even bought a little book on poetry once. I still have it. I'm going to do a little bit, all the time just to learn. It's like, oh no, I'm not. I don't have time for that.
I'd rather no. Let's go rearrange the closet or something.
All right, so I have just a couple more questions. I guess first of all, where do you see your writing going from now? How now that you've moved into sort of a new stage in your life, and your new place, new type of book. Where do you see yourself going from now, forward?
I think my writing is really going to reflect not only what I've experienced, but what I look forward to experiencing. I'm going to be a lot more compassionate to my characters, allow them their full flaws and joys and pleasures, and I have the next few books lined up. I know what I'm
You have the next few what?
The next few books lined up. Like,
oh, wow.
I already just because I didn't publish for 10 years doesn't mean I wasn't, thinking about. I was playing possum. I had to really kind of subsume that part of myself, but it was always there, and that's why I didn't completely drop off of, like, say, Facebook.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's so heartening, because there are people that were with me from the beginning, or from 2008, like my friend Veronica, waiting and waiting and waiting.
That's awesome. That's great. That's really, it's nice to have people like that are encouraging you.
I mean, she's now a friend,
Yeah.
a friend, and just knowing you have that kind of support, and that they're willing to let you grow. And they're excited for me and supportive. I think I'm bringing all of that into my writing, and that I am in such a wonderful, privileged position that I sacrificed a lot for, and cost me a lot personally. And now I make no apologies. I am going to work my butt off, and I'm really looking for. It's the best kind of work, isn't it?
It is. It is.
We're really lucky. Even though people, kind of marginalize us and think it's so easy.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It's not. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time sitting down, at your desk and really working and trying to make it happen. So, yeah. Do you have a specific project like that? Which one is your next one?
I'm at a stage where I have to run it by people. Okay. That isn't that a weird place to be? Like, what do you think is the next book? Or it's just not me committing to, like, this one is tickling my pickle, kind of thing. I got to really be strategic about it, and devote the time to the book that has the best viability, honestly. And I still will enjoy it and love it and devote myself to it, but I just can't say, I feel like amusing myself. When the time comes for me to commit to the next book, I have a few things that I think hopefully will turn into real books.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Okay, last question. So what is your writing superpower?
My sense of humor.
Okay.
I think my sense of humor, because my father is very funny, serrated, dark, dry. And my mother she's very generous with her laughter. So I got a combination of dry, dark, and dorky. I really, and I think that comes across in not only in me personally, but in my writing. And I've had other author friends ask me, like, can you help me be more funny? So, I think that's a compliment. Sometimes because humor, I think, is vital to books, especially a dark book.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, like, shoehorn it in there, but I remember telling Tony, like, I know this can be funnier. There are places where it does need humor. I just need to step back from it and then kind of find the natural place for it. So I really do enjoy having a good sense of humor and being funny. I remember I once said to my son that, I'm a funny woman. And he said, well, way to brag, Mom. And then I said to him, I said, hey, kid, you're constantly saying how smart you are. How come I can't acknowledge I'm a funny woman? I have a great for me. That's always going to be part of my book. So because I do enjoy it. I mean, I amuse myself.
Yeah. And it's good. It's really good, and it comes, and there's different kinds of humor, like you're saying, you can be kind of dark, you can be sarcastic, you can be, it's great. It's great. And it's good for characters too, because it lightens the mood up a little bit and just makes them more, more personable. You like them more. Yeah.
I would hope so. I mean, I think the greatest compliment I can be paid is if I make someone who's reading laugh out loud. And then they say, I literally, because that to me is a spontaneous emotion of joy and pleasure.
Yes. And it means you touch them, you reach them. So,
and, in the way, that's what we aim to do.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Margo, for taking this hour to be here and to share a little bit about yourself and your book and the writing tips. Really, really appreciate it. Been really
my pleasure, honestly. Thank you
so much. So tell us when is the release date?
August 9th.
August 9th. Okay. And available everywhere, your website?
Everywhere, yeah. Village Books in Culver City. I walked in there and they ordered books. I pitched myself.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I will post your website, I guess. People can come to your website to learn more about you and also about, this book and other books and be able to follow you maybe on social media and all that stuff.
Well, I'm on there.
All right. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon. See you on social media.
Great. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.